Welcome to FMA Talk Live. This is your host, Datu Tim, with my wonderful co-host,
PG Ties here. Welcome, everyone.
How are you doing today, sir?
I am so great. A little tired, but I'm doing the opposite thing of you as travel. You just got back. I'm headed out.
There we go. See, that's how dedicated we are, or committed, or maybe we should be committed. So I was in Jacksonville this weekend. I taught at a CMA school, Championship Martial Arts. That was hosted by Master Ernie McKinney. Going back down in March to teach our Florida winter camp, I guess it's considered March. I'm not sure when that goes over. So we do 2 camps a year in the Jacksonville area. And then I'll be attending the My Elite Seminar. While I was down there, I also got to teach as well as attend Dave Kovar's ProMac seminar conference, East Coast Conference. Had a great time.
That's a big one, right? How was that?
That was pretty good. It's not as big as the Maya conference, okay, but they do 2 in Jersey, and unfortunately, the winter one kept getting complications of weather because of the time of the year. So they moved it down to Jacksonville at the Terzak's Terzak Family Martial Arts Academy. Great guys. They're with us as well with the Modern Arnis. I taught a Friday night session there. The CMA school, we had 25 people on a Thursday night. And it turns out we had some software issues where people tried to sign up, but the expiration date on the registration form was incorrectly filled out. So the form died before the event. I've had that happen myself, or I have a typo and put the wrong date in there for when it's supposed to go down and stuff like that. So, but even that being said, we had 4 schools represented, 25 people on a Thursday. We had 30 some odd people Friday night in the conference. And then I learned some good things. And the funny thing was, I met people from Buffalo at the event.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. Like, hey, where are you from? I'll tell Hartman. Oh, well, nice. And Matt, okay, where are you from? Buffalo. Say that again. Buffalo. Buffalo.
Nice. When did you get in?
4. And then I taught classes at 5:15.
And then you're here.
And then I'm here.
All right, good.
There's no rest for the wicked, and even less rest for me.
That's right. Now you're going to summon Renee.
Uh-oh. Oh, why did I say that? Yeah. Okay. And the pizza guy.
And the pizza guy. That's right.
So today's topic is about Modern Arnis and Remy Presas. We've talked about it quite a bit, off and on. I mean, this is what this channel is really dedicated to. And then we talk about other things as well. And actually, I'm actually very happy about next week's show. Before we get into this week's show, we have a special guest. Do you remember who our special guest is for next week?
I can't even remember what day it is today.
Today's Monday, the 30th.
All right, good.
Oh, this today is, wait for it, the 3rd episode of the season.
Of the 3rd season.
Of the 3rd season. Okay. So that's what I had to come up with. So I got a little something. Oh, I hit the wrong button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present here. Here is who we're going to have. Hey, Steve, how you doing? We're what am I doing here? We're both doing stuff.
We're here.
Yeah. Just flew in from Florida, and he's flying out to Colorado or wherever you're flying out. I don't even know where you're flying out. Salt Lake City. Oh, I flew through there recently. It's a nice airport. Okay, here we go. Boom. Next week.
Yeah, that's right.
We have, let me do this. On our show, Coach Danny Terrell, martial artist, coach, Sifu, teacher, veteran, friend, father, husband, grandfather. Okay, I got that from his website.
No, excellent. Those last 4 are particularly important. 5.
Those are, all good. And he is going to be with us next week. And when he chimes in tonight, because he usually does, we will remind him that he's on the show next week. Hey, Danny, remember? Oh, shoot.
This will be good. I'm not sure. I mean, he gets around and he shares a lot of good stuff. Any exposure, I think, for him is excellent because he's an awesome resource.
Mm-hmm. And I think He is an unknown gem.
Yeah. Well, except for the people that know him, and then they're like, duh.
Duh, yeah. So, all right. So, I mean, that's the problem with our industry as a whole. I mean, he's done so many. He's got a lot more diversity, so he's probably known in more circles than most of us in the FMA industry because of the things that he does, and that's what next week's show is going to be about. Unfortunately, when we talk about people and names and all this other stuff, I don't think the FMA industry really understands the scope or scale of things. Oh, we're known through the FMA industry. We're talking the minority of the minority.
Right.
1 in 10 people do martial arts. 1 in 10,000 does Filipino martial arts. We just don't have that same branding. When you go in the martial art industry, there's certain names, like the Gracies, like Chuck Norris, Remy Presas, names like that really blow up, that are known through multiple martial genres. Mm-hmm. A lot of people in the FMA industry are just known in the FMA industry, and some of them aren't even known outside their own art. Right. Hey, Frank, how you doing?
Hey, Frank.
So Steve says hello, and so does Frank. So, today is about Modern Arnis and Remy Presas, how they're both misunderstood by many, including the people who do the art at times. Which one do you want to tackle first?
I don't know. In some sense, it's super duper simple, and in some sense, it gets to be very, very personal and focused for you, and that's fine too. So I don't know. I mean, I actually like the Remy side of things, right? Because I think if people would have touched him, known him, felt him, they'd get the good and the bad. And he's human, but he was again another resource. As soon as I touched hands with him, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not doing this for fun anymore. I am stuck with you. All right, you're stuck with me.
Yeah. How is the audio?
I think it's pretty clear. You don't have the stereo thing going on, right?
No.
So I think it's good.
What speaker or what microphone are you using?
The same big one. Oh, but now it's closer again.
Okay.
The USB one.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it just sounded a little far away.
I'm a soft-spoken guy.
And I'm blue today. I'm blue. I tried red. Red didn't work.
Aggro Tim.
Yeah. So I'm gonna just keep changing my colors.
There you go.
So I think the guy really let's
start with a guy.
Yeah. Listen. Everyone is one of a kind. We're all unique. Yep. We're all like snowflakes. There aren't alike. But Remy was really, really different. Yeah. Mr. Zach, how you doing? I spent a weekend with him.
Well, and I don't want to get anybody to get spun out of control. So this is not a hero worship thing. This is trying to get a sense for who Remy is and where is he coming from with this stuff. He's a silly bugger, off color at times, super serious, super not. He made mistakes. But you know what? You just said it. You said it right there. Everybody's special. He was excellent at making everybody feel they were a special part of what he was doing.
Let's talk about the off color for a moment, because I want to, there's some things I've learned after Remy's death and continue to learn that helps me understand the man more.
Sure.
And you and I are both going through this journey together, but separate, but together. So I remember one time at a Michigan summer camp, Remy came out and said, hey, listen, I want to apologize if I'm from another culture. If I said or did anything to offend anybody, I'm sorry. But I come from a different culture. So he moved to the States as a 35-year-old-ish person, around 35 years old. I know of people. So we have Kaisertown nearby. Kaisertown is the Polish section of Buffalo.
Oh, okay, cool.
There are people who've lived there all their lives and don't speak a lick of English. They've been here for 30, 40 years. Mm-hmm. And the children and the grandchildren are their interpreters. They've never once attempted to learn the English language. there are people from all different sorts of cultures. Now, when you move to the States, you should adapt the American culture. Okay. That being said, we give plenty of people today latitude for where they came from.
Yeah.
We take that initial step of, hey, listen, this person came from there. That was okay there. It's not okay here, but we have to understand it's going to take a little learning curve to get people on the program. Now, you take someone like a Grandmaster who you have all this reverence for, and no one would ever correct a Grandmaster, which I'm all about all the time. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Oh, hey, Chris.
I have no problems correcting anybody, as those who will remember FMA Talk, the discussion group, where I had to ban certain Grandmasters and Masters because they didn't understand etiquette, or what we would say netiquette.
Right.
And
off the whole internet, right? You kicked them off the whole internet.
Oh, well, that's what I was accused of.
Right.
But of course, when I saw these people in person, they were fine. We were best buds, you know.
But I think not to get too far off track here, but I think that, we're, U.S. is known as a melting pot for a couple of reasons, but you still have to do a little bit of melting so we all work and play together.
So I thought when Remy said that, that showed a huge amount of humility on his side.
Sure.
Actually try to take responsibility for his actions and hoping that people would understand where he was coming from.
He was actually very caring and sensitive.
But I don't think the Americans did. And I'm an American, by the way.
Yeah, no, I think I like the humility aspect there. He was, larger than life and all sorts of that stuff. But he was also, when it came right down to it, pretty humble about a lot of things. I remember, actually, this is a story I'm going to ask you about. You remember asking him, or somebody around you asked him, since he trained with Anshong, how would he do? How good was he compared to that?
So listen, I'm going to tell you the story. I'm going to tell you a separate story. Before I give you that answer, I trained with Ted Buat. Ted Buat was the designated successor for Anshan Bakan.
Right.
He taught for Anshan Bakan when Anshan Bakan was out of the club. He never took that as what he wanted to do. He moved to the States, became an engineer, personal students. But the Balintawak community had high praise for Ted while he was alive. Bobby got him. And after. Bobby Tabwada got him inducted in the Hall of Fame. He's like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it. Didn't matter. We're putting you in. Good. But I don't want to do this. Lo and behold, and hello, Eric.
Hey, Eric.
From Portland, Oregon. He goes, I'm training with Ted, and I'd ask him stories about Remy. So when we talk about, because evidently Paulo and I are going to talk about were the old masters really as good as everyone thinks they were, and that he thought that today's fighters would destroy them. Just as a prequel, these are guys that got done fighting in World War II and have no problem hurting people, just as a factor. But whatever.
Or bowling, right? There's that story.
Going bowling with. Well, we won't talk about that.
Right.
And we might address this. This might be a good topic after Paulo's to follow up, because I want Paulo to do this first.
Well, that's what reminded me of the story. But anyway, we're getting distracted. So you're doing this first story first.
Ted and I were talking about Remy. And he goes, Remy had brass balls. This is what he told me. He had brass balls. I'm like, oh, okay. and of course, Ted is from Detroit. He works in the automotive industry, and he's Filipino, and he's just from the islands, and he's descriptive. And he's not saying it to be mean. He's just saying it to illustrate a point.
Right.
How you doing, Chris?
Hey.
Chris. So he goes, Remy would take crappy techniques and make them work because he was that convinced, and there was no question in his mind he could take out anybody. He took out Delphine Lopez's nephew, because if he took out Delphine Lopez, Delphine would have killed him or had him killed. I'm like, and those were the two top fighters under Anshan, were Remy and Delphine. So that's the prequel to what we're going to say. So you talked about Remy's humility and when someone asked him the question. So after I got into Balintawak, because Remy opened the door for me, I said, Remy, could you take Anshan Bakan? And he looked at me without even batting an eye. No way. I'm like, wow, this is a guy that had no fear of anybody. This is a guy. There's the no bullshit story because there's documentation on this. Was in Japan.
Oh yeah, right.
With a hunk of rattan, beat down a kendo practitioner.
Right.
In a match, and this guy's dressed in his armor, and Remy has a hunk of rattan, no armor. Kind of. Now, granted, it wasn't a real sword. But I've played that game because the gentleman who teaches out of my school, Hiroki Kimura, is a kendo practitioner. Is the top kendo practitioner in Buffalo, right from Japan. And wow, I remember my first experience with that and just smoked me. I had the hunk of rattan. I'm going up the block and he's cutting my middle open. I'm like, dang.
One of those quiet, classic, understated, skilled foreigners for sure.
And I'm like, where did that come from? And how the heck did Remy beat a guy like this?
Right.
Because it's a whole different animal, ranged, everything, power. So Remy, who has traveled the world doing all this other stuff, has done everything. I mean, like, crossed hands with more people than anyone that I know of.
Right. And worked his way up through several teachers to blood twat before he got to Enshon.
Think about it. Remy did more seminars than anyone on the planet, which means he crossed hands with more people than anyone on the planet.
And he was learning the whole time, by the way.
And his comment to me was, no, I can't take Enshon. Never thought about it. Never hesitated. Came out of it. Nope.
No way.
Usually it's like, well, Tim.
Right.
He's trying to translate what I said and coming up, let me think about that. No, this was like, could you take Enshon? No.
I can see him saying that. He was very matter of fact, right? So if he saw some bullshit, he'd be basically, bullshit.
Bullshit. That is bullshit.
That's right. So if he gave you that fast of an answer, it's probably just as from within undeniable.
He knew his limitations. He was a kind man. I mean,
made you feel like family.
He would take money out of his pocket and give it to you to help you out.
Yep.
But I mean, like, I think you and I had a different access to most people. I mean, like, I remember talking to people like, Rich Parsons and I, and we're talking about Remy. Actually, this is not on, so I don't need to have it on. We were talking about Remy, and there's a bunch of us. I remember Dan Anderson was like, just looking at us. We're telling all these stories about Remy goofing around here and goofing around there and goofing around here and goofing around there. And Dan just goes, man, I never had that kind of relationship. So, I mean, some people had that student teacher and that's all. But I think because the other thing is, how long did you keep Remy around? Did you follow him around everywhere? Did you I kept him at my house. When I first did it, I didn't have a place I'd feel comfortable bringing him in, but when I got to that point where I had a lodging that made sense, I mean, he spent practically a week here at a time. And a couple times it was him and G for quite some time.
Right. Well, he told us he preferred staying at people's houses, those that he liked. But I mean, with us, he's like, yeah, no, thank you.
I would say this, where he didn't prefer doing that, when there's too many people to talk to. Because in some, the problem here, so 80s and 90s, his last big year was 2000, and that's when he got diagnosed.
Yep.
He got diagnosed in October of 2000, if I'm not mistaken. So most of the 2000, he was, going strong.
Yep.
But he had a lot of 2000 was okay, but prior, I mean, when you think about the 80s and 90s, 78, hey Sam, 75 on is when he started doing seminars, basically 74, 75. All right. That time, we weren't good people as martial artists. I mean, I was a good person. I would visit all these other martial arts schools.
Sure.
But back then, and there's still of it today, there's a lot of territorial nonsense. We have to realize that our true enemy is not martial arts schools. Okay. To me, so a martial arts school opened up in West Seneca now. So there's here's me being a jerk. There's us, and then there's a karate school, and then there's BJJ. So I always put BJJ in another category.
Right.
But this BJJ school it teaches the sport It doesn't teach you. So I throw I wouldn't. I could put boxing in another category. It's literally. I mean, martial artists. We are athletes. We are in the sport, but I think it doesn't try to teach the same values per se. It's in a niche market. So but okay. There's a BJJ school. There's a karate school now, and there's me. So there's 3 times. Hey, Jackie. There's 3 times the quantity of schools that used to be in West Seneca, which means the visibility has increased by 300%.
Right.
Okay. Or tripled. Yeah. So that means it's on people's mind more.
Right. I think you nailed it. That's a big key, right? Because if people, if they're not thinking about it, they don't know about it. They don't know there's all these different martial arts out there. They don't know that they can do it as an adult. They don't know that they can do that as a desk jockey or a mechanic, or it doesn't really matter what. It's not apparent and it's out of mind. So it's it's out of sight, so it's out of mind.
The more schools out there, the better chance people are going to go do martial arts.
Yep. They can't find it if they don't see it.
I mean, think about this. Dance studios. My God. It is crazy that these studios will close down for the summer, more or less, and they'll have 200-300 registrants in the fall.
Right. But they're in every strip mall, almost.
Oh, my God. The quantity of dance studios around here is crazy.
Yep.
Okay. But up until this year, we just tripled the amount. Well, okay. So, I want to say triple. Right now, it's up 50% because, 50%? 2, 3. Yeah, it's up 50%. Okay. But, hey, George.
Hey, George.
Oh, true.
That's your George, right?
And then he goes, yeah, then hi guys. That's Harris, yeah. So, when we look, you go to a food court, there's not a question whether you're going to eat. It's where you're going to eat.
Right.
So this is what we need to be like. But that's another thing. But the era that Remy was doing this stuff, that's when people were a lot more territorial and didn't want to work with each other. So when he would come into town, if it was a town they had a lot of different places that trained with,
right,
he'd stay at a hotel more so he can meet with everybody and it wouldn't be awkward. Like, okay, right. So let's say he stayed with you and Remy and I didn't get, or you and I didn't get along. It makes it, I don't have access to him.
Right.
Well, I should, but I might not feel comfortable. Hey, Ty, what's up? What do you need?
Well, and it messes up the whole energy and stuff. There have been times where, we hosted 2 separate places in the same city on different days just so that the people that didn't get along could have some training, which is unfortunate because we're better than that.
Oh, my God.
We should be.
I saw that in Michigan a lot because Remy would come in. He'd go to the Michigan area quite a bit.
Right.
And I'd go to two different hosts, and not many people went back and forth. I'm like, really?
On the other hand, we benefited, right? Because we're ready to go to all of them.
Oh, man, that was good for me. Win-win.
Right. Greedy.
I mean, well, Remy did one in Buffalo. He'd stay here for weeks at a time before it really blew up. So he would do 5 seminars in Buffalo. So I would go to all of them. I don't have to pay for one of them because that was in the school that I was in.
Right.
So the others, because I was an advanced student, I was his assistant.
There you go. Which is his own type of learning.
And the other guys liked me for some reason. I have no clue why, but once I became a black belt, that changed.
That's what I was going to say. Well, there's a lot of stuff behind that. We won't go there. No. I guess you said hi to Craig. I didn't see him there. So, hey, PG yep. Craig.
But, Remy, contrary to popular, listen, Eric, this is a Tim story, using it towards Remy. Eric was interviewed, your teacher, Eric Alexander, was interviewed for the Modern Arnis Next Generation that he and I were both in.
Yeah, I was very proud of him.
And he was talking to the author of that, which was one of my students, Paul O'Grady. And he goes, and Paul's trying to find the write-up because he goes, it was a real good article. Unfortunately, the article was 8 pages. And then by the time it got to black belt, the editors had changed.
Right.
So instead of being 8 pages, it was 8 paragraphs.
Right.
So they talked about a bunch of things. And Eric told a story to Paul. He goes, I remember when I first met Tim Hartman. He goes, I thought he was bragging. I thought he was a braggart. He was talking about all these things, and we just thought he was arrogant. And then he was just saying, all this bullshit that he could do that he couldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw him a few more times, and I realized he wasn't bragging. He was just doing what he was doing. He just said, "Yeah, this is what you do, and you can do it." And Remy was that way. He didn't write a check his body couldn't cash.
That's true. Yep.
Okay. And a lot of times, as martial artists, sometimes we skip through the minutia of being modest to make the comment and say, no, what do you think? Well, no, just be blunt. And a lot of times we're blunt because sometimes when we're trying to be nice, things get lost in the message. Mm-hmm. And there's difference between making a direct answer and being as politically correct. I mean, right. I know where I fit. I know where I feel I fit in the world martial arts industry and in the Modern Arnis specifically. And what I would always say with people afterwards, they go to me, hey, so are you the guy? And, well, there's a lot of good guys out there. Well, are you the guy? I go, and finally I'd say, I'm the most visible guy, which was always the fact. I mean, I was doing 15, 20 seminars a year while Remy was alive. No one else was doing it. And that doubled when Remy passed, but, at the time, it was always trying to be nice and say, hey, let's do this. I'm a visible guy, and I think a lot of times when Remy would say things, people thought he was being cocky as opposed to just stating fact. And like I said, I never saw him write a check his body couldn't cash. But that's just my thought.
Nope. Yeah. Yep.
What do you got about him?
Well, I said a few things already. You touched on one that I was going to tag into as well, which is the idea that that he in a lot of ways he was gentle and caring. So I remember one time I was working with him, and I was a little too slow or a little too weak on a block, and it went right through, and he bapped me pretty good upside the head, and he felt so bad. I'm like, no, that's all on me. I screwed that up. And I was actually embarrassed that he was bothered because it was all my fault, but he was so concerned because he wanted you to have fun. And he would start every seminar on that. So me and Raymond and I would look at each other at the start of all these camps, and Remy saying, hey, you guys have fun. And we're looking at each other. Oh no, he's turned us on because you don't want to tell us to have fun because that's all we're going to do. And it's going to ruin, we're going to have the blast, but everyone else is going to be like, who are these jokers?
Yeah. Like did you heard him? It's time to let loose.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. We were looking at each other going, okay.
Well, I mean, I feel very similar in those ways that a lot of times putting each other in excruciating pain is fun. Okay. So, I mean, come on. I mean, there's got to be a sadomasochist thing going on in the martial art world. I mean, people are paying for us to crush each other.
Well, we would do it to each other. I remember we would mess up a technique right when Remy's around so that he would show on your partner. So I'd be working with Raymond or he with me, and we'd mess it up, and Remy would go and have to show on them. No, you do it like this. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get that, sir. Could you show it again?
Well, here we go. And then George said he cared about everyone, and George
he made you feel it.
George. So here we go. This is the cool thing. So George is one of our PGs now. But he wasn't back then. And he ended up hanging out, and Remy was Remy's driver for quite a bit, where they're out hooting and hollering and going out and getting street food, and then we ended up all dancing till 4 a.m. and stuff like that. But it wasn't just Tim. I mean, there was George, there was Kevin Black, there was Paul O'Grady, we have a cadre of people, Jeff Reck, and all this stuff that was part of our group. And he got to know everybody. He wasn't like, Tim, you're the teacher. You will draw the line and keep them away from you. No, right. Or keep them from me. I mean, listen, there's people that he didn't want to be around. There's no question about that, because people like me would annoy him at times.
Well, I remember him saying that a couple of people. One, but I'm really thinking of another one. He watch out for him. He's not one of us. But under that, he loved people, and he wanted to connect with them, and he wanted you to have fun. It was good stuff.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Steve, I purchased Remy's book in 1978, and it was autographed.
That must be the
with
pink one.
autographed book.
Yeah.
Sent me a few sticks, some patches, an emblem to hang on my training area. I did not ask for all of this. He just sent it. It inspired me so much, and Arnis has been an important part of my life ever since then.
That's awesome.
Yep, that's cool. That's very
Mhm.
cool.
He always found a way to make each person feel special. I remember the first time he asked me to take some notes for him on one of the things he was doing. I'm like, me, little old me, okay, I'll try. I sent it to him, and
He was a grand figure, but he really wanted everyone to just to be one of the guys. Let me ask you this: how many people out there know of the head guy that knows the name of everybody in the room?
Oh my gosh!
Or let me. Okay, no, that's too grandiose. Let me back up. Okay, how many people have you met by name that could remember your name a year or two later? See, because he didn't know everyone's name in the room if he hadn't if he hadn't talked that far down. Because a lot of times he made a point of touching everybody in the room, making a connection, I should say, with everyone in the room. It may not have been exchanging names, but if he knew your name, he knew your name.
Yep, forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, I mean, once in a while we're like, Tim, who was the guy from here? You mean John this? No. Oh, it was this. Okay, if you say so. I'm like,
well, like you said, so even if you missed the name of it, he had some sort of personal connection with them. So he would make sure that he remembered you as a person, whether that's your name or some other attribute that he remembered, maybe what he taught with you, what your question was, whatever like that.
Well, I just had to put the heat up.
Yep.
I'm terrible with names. I'm the first to admit it. So I have to work at getting the names down. So here's a little thing I do. I'll admit it. I go, I have Rita's name in your contact list on my phone.
Yeah.
Because when I first met him, like, okay, I need to get the names down.
Right.
I got a whole list of be like, okay, this is the wife, this is the girlfriend, this is the daughter, this is the son, this is the whatever, because I meet so many people. And it's important to me to make them realize that I do care about everybody, because I do. I mean, I generally, when I meet people, but I would go around and go, who's that guy?
Right. Well, it's funny because you say about the other names. Remy was good about that too. If he had got to that to where he got the names of your people, he would remember those too, and he might never have met them. And ask about them. It was good stuff. I mean, he wanted that connection. It was important to him, and he made that important, that feel important to you.
And so everyone knows. So I'm like, Remy knew my grandparents. He knew my grandparents because that's who I lived with, and they would talk. I mean, because he would, I would call him, he would call me back. He would talk to them. He met them in person, and and we were all like, oh, okay, And this is a guy that took over my father role, basically. I mean, my father passed away when I was 16. Or I was 15, turning 16. I had a bipolar stepfather, which we talked about that in one of the other shows. I really didn't have a father figure. My grandparents were actually both sets of my grandparents were more parents to me than my mother was. And like I said, my father was, and for those who don't know, my father was a state police officer in Syracuse, New York, over 2 hours away from me where he lived. My dad was not a good husband, but he was a great father. He did his best to do right when we were around each other. And so I didn't have this constant positive father role. And my grandparents, like I said, they did the best they could. But like Remy was was that model for me. And we actually, he would introduce people to me. Oh, Anak, come here. Which is, your kid. And then he would, oh, Tatay. And people would look at us. And the Pinoys were all like, they're looking at my eyes. I go, I see it. I go,
Right.
Stop it. No. We're family by choice, not by birth.
Right.
But
I wish I could remember some of the stories he would share. We had however long it takes to drive from Dallas to Houston. We drove him down from Actually, it was from Bryan College Station. So we drove him from Dallas to Bryan one day, and they did seminars, and drove him down to Randy Shea's place in Houston after that seminar the next day. And some of just the sharing and the stories and the connections. Again, I like what George said. He was really wanted to be one of the guys. I think you tagged this a little while ago too. It's you're traveling that much. It's hard to have the personal connection that you need.
Well, okay, let's talk about the misunderstood portion about Remy here. No one can fathom loneliness until you've been on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We didn't have cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
When he passed away, the internet was it was in its infancy for the public.
And he didn't really use that stuff, but yeah.
No. When he died, 30% of all households had computers. Okay. And most of the world that was using them were in computer cafes. I don't even think when he passed that computer cafes were a thing at the time. I mean, 2000, he passed away. I mean, AOL, it was all dial up when he left, when we lost him.
Practically, yes.
Okay. There was, there was no,
AOL, CompuServe. I ran a bulletin board system for the longest time, and university, right, was what I had. So I had a lot of connections that people didn't have. I just assumed everybody had that stuff.
So off of that, the rest of the world, we all had dial-up. Everyone, it was AOL,
right?
which was the most published CD in the world.
Right, you get a million of them free.
Yeah, bigger than it was the biggest platinum or multi-platinum record or whatever.
Right.
So, but I mean, we didn't have that, So Remy would go on the road, and it was us. I mean, if you didn't have that, if you weren't willing to talk to him as a person, I don't know. Is that hands? Okay, Athena, how you doing?
High five. I'm saying that's what I'm taking.
I think it's.
Well, it's supposed to be high five, but everyone uses it as prayer or thank you.
Oh, high five. Yeah, there you go. Good. Okay, yeah, got it. I mean, if you weren't one of those guys, see, a lot of people were afraid to talk to him.
Well, and that's the culture over here, right? It's not only his cultural differences; it's ours as well, as far as what that interaction, right? It goes both ways.
Yeah, and I mean, I would actually reach out to him. I mean, I see everyone looks at me because I just talked to all these guys like, hey, what's up? Mm-hmm. Because I was part of Remy's entourage, and I got to see behind the curtain.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And if the Grandmaster Remy Presas told me to call him Remy all the time, which I would refer to him in class that way to my students because there's too many professors to keep track of.
Right.
But in front of it, I would never, professor. Right. Didn't call me Remy, professor. And a lot of people, same thing, call me Remy.
Right.
Okay, professor. Whatever you say, professor. I wouldn't go down that path, and here we go.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes. That's a beautiful one.
Oh my. So, yeah. So, but, I think the big thing was everyone treated him like this deity at times, not by request,
right,
but by his actions as the supreme martial artist that he was. I want to talk about that portion next.
Yes.
But I remember, so George was talking about, he was teaching in Harrisburg, and we went down for a one-day seminar. Dwayne Rainier was the host. Come in, I have my crew with me. We all go in. George was part of that crew. So I'm trying to hide in the room. So like everyone's working on, I'm just laying down on the floor in the corner. I got something over my head because I'm just, it was a long night getting down there, Actually, we got down and then we stayed up talking all night. So then, we're hanging out. So he's not coming in right away. So then he comes in the room. And in the meantime, I was talking to Michael Bates. I was talking to all these other guys were coming up and talking to me. Oh, haven't seen you, blah, blah, blah. And then I end up doing some extra stuff because I see my guys doing some extra Sinwali's. And I'm like, here's what it really is, blah, blah, blah. So, all right, Remy comes in the room. He starts things going. I don't make myself known there. and our whole group is like hiding from Remy. So then he starts walking around the room and hangs out and just sees our little pod. Like, oh,
Right.
and he hugs it, everything left and right. Like,
Yep.
oh my God, George, Paul, what are you doing? Oh my, Kevin, Tim, what are you doing here? You go, what do you mean what we're doing here? And usually, so I was the guy that would chase Remy. Okay. Remy was like the Grateful Dead of the martial art world. But most people did camp to camp.
Right.
Well, no, and that became a thing at the end. It wasn't a beginning thing. I had a long history since about 1987 to see Remy on the road as many different places as I could.
Mm-hmm.
I started hosting them as well. And I would say, hey, listen, I'm hosting Remy here. If you'd like to come here as a host, I will give you a free ticket. Okay. I'm from one host to another. And they would say, oh, great, Tim. And you know what? I'll do the same for you. Thank you. Because I know you're not coming to me.
Right.
But listen, even if they did come to me, they'd probably bring somebody with them.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yep. And if Remy wondered about the number, I go, Remy, I gave these guys free tickets because blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Well, I think he definitely noticed if you followed him around, especially earlier on, because not too many people, like you said, did it.
That's what I did right there.
Right. We rolled up on him one seminar and surprised the heck out of him. He basically just stopped the whole seminar for a second while he greeted us, and like we were somebody. And to him, we were. But you know what I'm saying? It wasn't a big deal. We were just trying to support him and learn. But I remember that because it stuck out, and again made that connection and that caring. So and we weren't the only ones who did that too. That's for sure. But he noticed, and it meant a lot to him. Because again, you have the people and love in some sense, right? Mm-hmm. And you see them again and again. That's good stuff.
And here's the thing, and this is what I didn't let go, or didn't let get in my way. I didn't let my ego get in the way of. Wait for it. I don't like the host, so I'm not going to support the host. Yeah, guess what? You were never supporting the host. You were supporting Remy Presas.
That's right. Yes.
So when people wouldn't. So if people had to. There are multiple cities that had to have Remy in multiple times a year because the two or three schools wouldn't support each other.
Right.
That's bad on you. Yep. Because it wasn't about supporting each other. It was about supporting Remy. What you should have done, if any of the guys are listening, you dumbasses, what you should have done is maximize the exposure of Remy.
Yes.
Oh, hey, listen, Ty, you take the brunt this time. I'll take the brunt net. You host them at your house and all this other stuff in January. I'll take care of them in July. Win-win.
Yeah, I think people were worried about ego. Well, some of them were worried more about ego than they were about being just greedy for what Remy had to share. And that's where I was from day one, because that's just what I wanted. I wanted everything that he could possibly share, and I wanted it from him.
Okay, so before we get into the art, I want to talk about this. And for those who are watching that have met Remy, please chime in and call and either support what we're saying or call bullshit on this. I want you to do one of the two. Okay. I'm not asking you to go along with whatever I say, but I'm going to say something. And if you guys don't feel that and you've had the personal experience with Remy, then call me on it. Now, the other thing, too, is if you only saw Remy once, then that's probably not enough to do this. But the thing here is, first and foremost, as much as I want more footage of Remy out there, none of it does him justice. None of it, because it's all visual. And there are many top-tier martial artists I see out there and have amazing videos, and they're amazing martial artists. But when you see what they're doing, and here's the but, there's nothing missing. You get everything that they're showing you. Now, that's not a bad thing. Okay? Remy had a feel that others didn't have. Okay? Remy had a feel that if he touched you, you knew what he could do to you. And all these other guys, they'd have to, I don't want to say it the wrong way, but they'd have to do it to me. And I'm like, yeah, I respect you got all these moves. That's cool. But
Mhm.
Remy had this thing where he boom, and you felt it in your toes.
Right.
Hi, what are your thoughts?
No, yeah, that, like I said, when I first crossed hands with him, that was the shift from, hey, this is fun, extra stuff, to, oh, this is a new primary interest, just from touching hands with him.
Chad, here we go. Remy had an amazing dynamic energy that you had to feel to believe.
Yep.
3 people, 3 names, including Remy. Okay. So I said Remy.
Mhm.
Wally J, Dr. Mungji.
Mhm.
These are the 3 people that I have never felt energy like that from.
Mhm.
These 3 people have energy that I've never had anyone else come close to it.
I think you get it, at least from my experience, you get it from people that have done a lot of real fighting. And you get it, in my mind, at least because I'm biased, I have some interests. I also get it from really, really high level internal guys when they have the shit. When they don't have it, I'm like, okay, go away.
So first of all, I don't like the name Modern Arnis. I'm against the word Modern Arnis.
Right.
Because I don't like the fact that people look down on the word modern, including myself. Like I combat Hapkido. I hate it because the word combat. Why not just say it's Hapkido?
Freestyle Kung Fu. I'm going to make one up.
Freestyle karate.
Yep.
American. And to me, that's more of a descriptive of a family of style. It's a style of training, not a martial system.
Right.
So, when you do combat judo or combat sambo, or I don't like my English mixed with my foreign words.
Well, and it messes things up too for other people. You remember the comment I got from I was doing one of my videos, and they're saying, "Who are you to modernize our niece?" I'm like, "Look, I'm nobody. This is what my teacher called it. My teacher, you take it up with him because I don't think there's a problem there."
Oh, let's put it in better perspective. So this dumbass is Filipino from the Philippines and accusing Ty of changing the system. And if you see in the middle of our screen here, the icon above, Remy A. Presas, Modern Arnis. Remy was the founder of Modern Arnis. And if any of these people, especially if that person sees that, hopefully they learned a lesson,
right?
From there. Yes, that one. Good. Okay. So, So because of that, I get a little, I'm like, dude, whatever. Let me just take care of this thing.
But this is a semantic problem, right? It brings with it some baggage, and it also is descriptive. We already talked about the story of why that name is.
Yeah. And it worked good for the Philippines, but
Sure.
It doesn't work good over here.
Right.
It is pretty awesome. You modernized it so the rest of us understand it. Yeah. I won't go down the thing, but okay. So you posted, you touched on this already. Your comment was that he fought it. Okay. I don't know how many people really fought.
Right.
Now, getting in a fight with a stick doesn't make it a stick fight.
Right.
Now, I know plenty of people who, yeah, okay. I know plenty of people in the FMA industry who've been in fights. I've probably been in more fights than most people in the FMA industry, but those fights had nothing to do with Filipino martial arts. And I'm sorry, a Filipino in a fight or a Filipino doing martial arts doesn't make you a Filipino martial artist. It makes you a Filipino martial artist.
Right.
Because when someone's doing point counterpoint, they said, "Well, Manny Pacquiao." Sorry, he's doing boxing.
Right.
It doesn't make him it doesn't make him an FMA guy. He's an F doing MA. He's a Filipino doing martial arts or doing martial sports. They were trying to say he was doing Yao Yan and Sikaran. I'm like, since when? He's always boxed. I've never, whatever. He finally showed up.
Uh-oh.
We're doing
okay,
pretty good.
That's a good show. We'll catch you guys later.
See you later. Time to wrap up. So listen, let's okay. We'll start where this started from. Remy's family system was taught to the guerrillas by his father and his grandfather during World War II.
Mhm.
Okay. So right off the bat, and this is something I didn't like sharing with the other guys. No problem. We understood. I didn't like sharing this because I had a problem with some of the other Modern Arnis guys trying to make bank off of the stuff that I do and say.
Mhm.
Okay. It's like, do your own work, But at the end of the day, Remy's father and grandfather, I mean, his father was contract, but his grandfather was there as well, taught the guerrillas during World War II to use their family system of martial arts to protect the Philippines from enemies, from enemy armies. Boom. This is where our lineage comes from. Now, Remy learned during World War II as a child, but those were hard times, and those would have been hard training. And what safety equipment would they have had back then? Zero. Remy then continued to do martial arts around the Philippines. And before WCAF was, I mean, I don't think I want to know when the stick fighting helmets were done, but I think it was probably in the 80s.
Sounds right.
Remy's fighting was done all before that.
Right.
Okay. Against a bunch post-World War II fighters.
And he didn't, he loved all those lessons, and he certainly benefited from them, and he knew that he benefited from it, but he didn't want anybody else to have to go through that. So he already knew how unfun that was.
Yeah.
So that tells me he did it.
And we can go into, and I've heard, okay, did I hear stories from him? Of course I did. But he didn't use those stories to make him he didn't use stories like that to bring me in. These are things that would come up in conversation that was relevant to what we were doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Plus,
it wasn't part of the salesmanship. That was not
it wasn't selling me. I did all these things,
Right.
Like I think in the Datu videos, there was what was it? There's a Datu series of products and thing in New York City or New Jersey, and they talked about all these different Filipinos. And one guy was saying, "Oh, I cut the head off, and the head was talking to the sand and all this other stuff." And I'm like, if you killed all the people you said you did, how'd you get in jail? Weren't in jail. Anjan Bakan had 2 stick fights that ended in death, 2 of many fights, but 2 ended up with people dying, and both times he ended up in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Which, when someone says, "Well, the guys back then really weren't all that tough," I'm sorry, there's a death rate.
Everybody can't have done death fights, because then there wouldn't be people.
And I'm not saying that people didn't challenge each other to kill each other.
Right.
I mean, Michael Harone told me a story when he was a kid. He saw shit happen in California with a bunch of Filipino sharecroppers. They just take each other out. I'm not saying that shit didn't happen.
Right.
But it may have been a fight that broke out and it ended in death. I don't think it was maybe a death match. There's a difference. Oh, I challenge you to a death. No, it was a fight broke out. Someone pulled out a knife and someone got stabbed.
I'm sure that happened, but it's not a regular thing that happens.
No. But you hear about it like it happened all the time.
Right.
Safety equipment started, like WCAF didn't start really till about the 80s. Remy moved over in the 70s. Okay. I know plenty of Filipino martial artists that are here in the States that are Filipino that never have been in the Philippines, have never been in a real stick fight. Hell, they may not have been even a real fight. Now, someone who's been in a bunch of fights. Oh, geez. I know the feeling. I heard people getting stabbed at the buffet in Detroit.
Lots of bad news. Yeah, lately.
Remy had this vibe that I get, like I said, I mean, like the stories that they talk about, I validated them with people like Ted Buat and others. Like I said, I only know of 3 people that I had that I've had verification that they got in fights. Stick dueling matches. Let me rephrase that. Stick dueling matches. Anjan Bakan, Kakoy Kinyete, and wait for it, Remy Presas. And what did Remy Presas do? He used to do fights for Anjan representing the gym.
Right.
one gym against another, or one, and it wasn't necessarily amongst the Lintwalk people because they were all underneath Anchon, but it was like maybe Remy, Anchon's guys versus Dulce Paras or another thing or whatever. Now, what was the quality of all the fighters back then? Don't know, but their teachers would have fought during World War II.
I always found it interesting that he was one of the designated fighters, or the designated fighter, because remember, he had all that other experience in different styles and stuff, and wasn't a pure student of Anchon. That's where he ended up. That's great. But it's interesting that he had already, certainly by then, had some sort of his own synthesis, if in expression, if not in what he was sharing.
Yeah.
So that I always found that interesting, because his hard work paid off in some way, shape, or form, and it was recognized.
So, but listen, and we're about to hop in the art. So, but like I said, when it comes to Remy, if you didn't feel it,
you missed out.
Like I said, he fought it for real. And if you've never crossed that, and I'm not even talking the stick crossing, I'm just talking him touching me.
Mm-hmm.
Like he'd block and he'd check you.
Right.
Okay, so I didn't need to feel the stick. I mean, he smacked. Okay, listen. When it can't. Okay, Remy would use everybody to do demos with because he wanted to empower all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came time to drop the hammer on somebody, I was the anvil. Okay, I took the beats. I could take the hits. I moved with him very well. As far as when it came to throws, I was very good at being able to adapt to the energy he was giving me. And the thing here is, I cannot tell you what he was going to do to me because he didn't tell me.
Right.
He was doing ad lib all the time, and you had to break fall one way or another. And if you, dude, I was great at doing this stuff because I was a great uke because I had a phenomenal tore. And I had to stay on. Well, I don't know if it was a phenomenal tore. It was a tore that would wreck me if I didn't move right. So I had to either, and George was there doing all this other stuff.
He'd make you look good, like you knew stuff. But he would pull things out of you.
The original Dread Pirate Roberts. He goes, I know something
Right.
you do not know.
I am left-handed.
I am left-handed. Okay, what do we have pizza here?
Kaliwa.
Okay. So he was the MC while you were
The hammer.
the hammer. Okay. I say can't touch this. I tried to say you can't touch this, but he didn't listen to me.
No.
Some of the best demos. Yep.
Yep.
Many of us were the ammo.
And it was treasure time. That was those. I think there was 3 years where he picked on me in Texas all through all these camps, and that was some of the most treasured time I had. But I was also happy when he moved on to other people.
Well, the thing is, I would be a jerk at times because people would tick me off. So I would go to them like, Remy's doing a move, and I go, hey, can you do a choke from there? Can you do a throw? But then when it came time, I walked up. I took all my lumps.
Yep.
All my lumps.
Well, there's so much you learned by that feel. It was, like I said, a treasured time for sure.
There we go. All of a sudden, you didn't see anything, and Tim was gone.
You didn't know you could fly or disappear. Or...
like, huh? Where'd he go? Look down. Oh, shit.
I know there are plenty of people that wish they were on the ceiling to get away from some of that.
Hey, listen, I got to do my kidney break. You do your thing for a moment. I'm going to be right back.
All right. Yeah. No, it's good. I'm glad we have some people on here that definitely felt him, had plenty of time, experience with him. And I'm glad you're chiming in, George and Chad. And I know there's got to be some other people on as well. But that said, so for those that haven't felt him, I would say listen, pay attention, and you're good. People that spend a lot of time with Remy, you're going to get little glimpses of things. You're going to be able to feel not Remy, but feel the next, some telephone game, right? So see if you can feel that, especially if you get to play with more than a few people that spent some serious times with Remy. And I think, you'll have more resource there than you might imagine. So I don't want people that didn't get a chance to feel him to feel excluded. That's not the point at all. We're part of this is, who was Remy and how did he get to where he's at? So we're hopefully going to get back onto what is modern next. But I wanted to get you a feel for Remy, what he brought to the table, what he was like, what you felt with him, and how he made you feel, which was a big part of the experience. I think that's a huge reason why he was so popular, was because he had that personal connection, enthusiasm, enabling, encouraging peace with everybody, even if he pushed you or expected lots or whatever. It was a very unique kind of bringing you in a way that you wanted to do more. So he was like a pusher, right? It wasn't the first one's free, but once you take the first one, you're hooked. And you're coming back, whether it's like wholehearted or if you're always going to keep doing it because, hey, this is a nifty add-on and it's just too enjoyable to stop.
He made you feel special, all of us.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Every
single one.
I want to address this once because I did, though. This was said on another podcast by a Modern Arnis practitioner, and I think he got it wrong because he looked at it from his students. And this was, really don't want to mention the person's name, but
actually, I don't know what you're talking about.
There's a person made a comment about how Remy would take the top person in school and beat the shit out of him to attract everybody else in.
Oh, yeah.
And that person, the person was a student of Remy's. The student was a child at the time he saw this.
Mm-hmm.
So Remy's Uke at the time was one of his top tier guys. So Remy would do a demo with whomever was the top person in the room to show his capability.
Yes.
Unfortunately, this child who really didn't follow Remy around other than seeing him locally, who's now an adult, saw Remy throw his teacher around,
right,
and knew him as the top guy in the room. So assumed the intent was, if I beat the shit out of the top guy,
right,
it'll attract other people. And this was actually shared on a podcast, and I was very upset about that because Remy, as much as he threw me around, was very careful to go within my limits.
Oh yeah, he could ride that edge. He could ride that edge like nobody's business. He knew
I wanted to be there. Yep. See, there's the whole thing. I was a willing victim. I actually made the joke, hey, listen, Remy, I'm turning 30. Who's going to take over my spot?
right.
He was like,
you graduated.
30?
Yep.
What? Okay, Junior, let's keep this. So 5 more years,
Well, I have a take on that. I think that, maybe it's just words or whatever, but the point is that yes, he would show his capabilities to build enthusiasm. It wasn't to intimidate or squash down or establish dominance at all. It was, in my take, to really establish that this stuff is fun and anybody can do it and see what you can do, all this cool stuff, and I can help you with that. And it was all about that and not about in my mind, trying to intimidate or own the room because, hey, I already got this best guy, so you better listen to me. That's no.
Yeah,
inspire. So there you go, Chad.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So he was a great teacher in that way. I'm sure he is where you learned to us, the student. Teachers were okay. Well, my eyes are messed up. He was a great teacher that way. I am sure he is where you learned to us, the students, or teacher, where you were presenting.
We got a lot of things from that. Yeah.
Okay. You just did it when you were went to Maryland. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, it was also a way for him to teach extra stuff. So if you were already with him a long time and could catch stuff, what he was showing extra that was all neat, that was teaching you. In the meantime, he's building enthusiasm for those that didn't catch it.
Well, let me share something with you guys too, and you will understand this, Ty. So we were in Frankfurt, Germany, I think. Dieter was hosting Remy. It was the second one I went to over there. And I had a rough day. We lost tickets and all this other stuff, and weird shit was going on. So I was just, most of the camp, I was just sitting around doing nothing. I was on a tour. We were going all over the place. We were in Denmark, Sweden, and then we were in Germany. Then we were going to fly home, and then I was going to teach in Philadelphia right afterwards. So lo and behold, I'm watching, and I don't know if I was watching Jeff Delaney or Chuck. I'm not sure who was over. It was,
So this must have been the late 90s then.
This is 99.
Okay.
So I'm sitting with Jason Arnold. And we're looking. I started laughing my ass off. What are you laughing at? Remy's getting faster. What? Remy's getting faster. Holy shit, he is. Nope, I was wrong. And I figured out a couple months later. And I told Jason I was wrong. What do you mean you were wrong? When I said Remy's getting faster. No, I saw it. I go, no, here's the problem. We were here. Remy was here. We were here, and he was training down.
Right.
He moved up, and now he's not going down as far.
Right.
I don't think anyone... We have no clue on how much he wasn't showing us, that he didn't have that partner that he could go. And I felt very honored that I was one of the few he could let loose on.
Right.
But he had a level. That was probably second or third gear for him. He had at least 2 more in the tank.
At least, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, holy cow.
Well, he did it 2 ways. One is sheer skill, but the other one is, of course, how he positioned you just by the positioning, right? He nicked you down into opportunities. So he already knew what those were before he even thought about them. He did it naturally. And so that gave him an extra range of slack.
Okay. Remy had to be a good teacher. I think he did 40 to 50 weekend of year all over the world, teaching all different systems or all different styles. We know how hard it is to get through a traditional martial arts. Yeah. Right. And this is what we started off the conversation with. He crossed hands with more people than anyone that I can tell you.
And a lot of people, we know there's those a-holes out there that want to push, test, try themselves, make a name, all that good stuff. He had to shut that stuff down before he even got started, at least more than once. I know that happened.
His first student in the States, Bruce Jutnick, tells the story that Remy was annoying. We went to do this demo, and he goes, that's it. This whole time, I'm going to disarm him.
That's right. I remember that.
We're doing the demo, and this is the guy he brought up, so he knows. He's like, I know where I'm going to do it. He goes, here it goes. And when Bruce went for the disarm, he switched hands. He goes, Bruce, you're good. But you're not that good.
Right. That was actually a badge of honor. Remember I told the story about Eric, right? They were doing some knife work, and they were going faster and faster and faster and faster. And it was impressing the hell out of all of us. And eventually Remy switched hands. and he may not have needed to, but he felt like he wanted to. And so we considered that a win. You made Remy switch hands. That's awesome.
Let me tell you something. So I'm going to deflate a lot of egos on this comment. In 93, 94, he came up with left on right tappy tappy. If it was after that point, don't put yourself. Don't think you're doing much because he was doing left hand, because he did left hand with everybody.
Right.
Okay, this was when he was coming up.
Right.
70s, 80s, and 90s, early 90s.
Right.
Before he developed the left versus right family of material.
For the drills and stuff in the training. I'm talking about a free form kind of, hey.
If he would all of a sudden freestyle tappy tappy.
Yep.
Before all the cross arm locks and all that other stuff.
Right.
Back then, because a lot of people, I did that in 96. No, doesn't count, because he had a whole system then to teach the lefty and the right to interact with each other.
Right. And then that was teaching. That wasn't, hey, you were going kind of, pushing each other a little bit, right? He was trying to push Eric, right? So Eric was pushing back, because that was good. And then, they were going faster. And he ended up switching. I'm like, Eric, did you see? He changed hands. So we clapped him on the back, and it was great. Great times.
Okay. So let's talk about the art.
Yes.
Because I actually have a pre-show tonight for FMA discussion about the Modern Arnis years, like what happened over the decades. And you have an early morning flight.
Yeah. Dark, pre-dark, something or another.
Okay.
And that's when I go to bed these days lately.
And if we forget, by the way, Coach Danny is on our show next week. I have to message him to remind him. Once I post things tomorrow, it'll blow up. It'll be, oh yeah, that's next week. We also have Vulpes training blades coming back in 2 weeks as well.
Right.
My mom did not use sticks. She used my face. She was a master of slappy.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Good old
So
days.
the arts. You know where I want to go with this. Maybe I should let you start it because
I don't know. So what is modern arts? Well, everybody knows there's a lot of influences for it, right? So we could start mechanically. What is it, right? So we had his family arc, which is related to a lot of polis, right? We had the local art type families of things that had some influences there. So that's why if you look at some Elizabeth Minda, one of his childhood friends, Lazo, there are some similarities. And then you have, of course, Balintawak and Shotokan and Judo and Wally J stuff later, right? All of these influences in Remy's experience folded together.
Remy talked to me about Kuntao and Sikron being part of it.
Sure.
And I got the validation of the Sikron because the first lesson, he taught me a lesson in Sikron back in the 80s. So in 2000 something, I got my first Sikron lesson from a Sikron master, Mark DeLeon. It was the same dang lesson. And I said, is it true that they, bandits would come and if you put your stuff down, another bandit would take it. And that's why they hold their stuff here and do all the kicks. He goes, yes. Also, you'd protect your loved ones. If you had a baby. I'm like, oh, okay. So validated. So Remy said everything he said a little different because, it's a little different. Mark's a little more educated in the use of the English language, So there's a bunch of Filipino blends in there, It is a Jeet Kune Do, but it predates Jeet Kune Do, and it was supposed to be a self-defense program.
Yep.
So there's been a whole bunch of things. People have made comments, Remy was very upright, and, he didn't do a lot of body shifting, or he didn't do a lot of up and down. He didn't hold himself low. And some of the people annoyed me when they were saying that. They were throwing him under the bus because, they themselves do a form of Balintawak, allegedly. And Balintawak is very upright. You do boxing shifting back and forth. So I don't know why the person, their Filipino isn't good, because Remy didn't do this. I'm like, but you're not either. So do you know what's going on here?
Well, he's also very efficient. And of course, there's also the gout, right? So especially later on, he didn't move as much, but he didn't have to.
He didn't have. Well, see, Remy got this. I find myself seeing things
right
in many martial arts. And I see these people, and I find myself going through that at this time, my era, and my era of my training, that you get to a point where you start becoming more efficient. Your timing is better. Your distancing is better.
Positioning.
And you just end up like stepping in, and your martial fingerprint seems to almost be erased. Why do I have to do all this when I can just step in and do that?
Right.
And Remy had that. Remy was at that level when we first met him. I have to force myself to do certain things that I did when I was younger, because I also don't want my students to see what I'm doing now and try to shortcut themselves and go, I want the end result without taking the same path.
Well, I was going to say, you needed that stuff to get there. So why deprive them of that?
So there's multiple people in many different industries that only want to do what's useful. Okay. How do you know what's useful if you haven't tried it all? Furthermore, here's the other thing. All the stuff that you're complaining about, those are the things that develop the skills too. We were just doing the Sinwali, Remy would call it Sinwali application drill. I don't like the name. Right. I use the Sinwali seizing capturing drill, which we're going to work on a new nomenclature for this. But you do single Sinwali as an exercise. And every time your hands touch, you try to grab it harder than you think. And then on top of which, turn it into a locker control. That's not Sinwali boxing, everybody. Sinwali boxing was the 2-count trapping we would do from the third hand form.
Right.
Sinwali application drill is single Sinwali and you'd lock and control from there. Okay. Now, some people may have combined them. Some people may have used the wrong terminology because they remembered it incorrectly. And I've sat on tests where I had to correct people like that were running the test because they didn't understand the difference.
Right.
And once again, most people in the Modern Arnis world, probably 95+% did another art and only did Arnis when it was convenient.
Well, and there's another thing, right? Remy was not, he was very big on trying to avoid Filipino words and terminology for things because he wanted to be very accessible. So he would say, do this, or, somebody comes with the name of it, sure, call it that. He wanted you to do the material, and he wasn't too concerned about the names, so that when there is that confusion, it's confusing to us.
Right. When you learn in the seminar format, not at headquarters, there's a lot of misunderstandings going, stuff like that.
Right.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Guatemala. Wow.
Go ahead.
Hey, Carrot.
Oh, wow. Guatemala. Finally got the signal. It says in here in Guatemala. Long work day, fading fast. Wondering if any Remy influence down here. I don't know of anything down in Guatemala.
Yeah, I don't know. Let us know.
Yeah, if you find something.
That's right. Hey, Darren.
Hey, Darren. Darren, he's watching in stealth mode.
Well, he's also probably wants to remind us to say his teacher or one of his teachers, right? PG Chad has a seminar next weekend, Saturday.
This Saturday, yes. This coming Saturday, he's got a seminar down.
Hawkinson or whatever I never get the name right.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Okay.
Anyway, I had to get that in because I'm going to forget. So thanks.
Yeah, there you go. Are you going to be back in time for that one, or are you still going to be out of town?
Yeah, if travel goes well, I'll do that. The plan is to do that for sure. I want to support Chad.
Cool. All right, so the Marshall system. So what Remy did was ingenious, and he had two ways of teaching. But I consider myself. I used to do the 1%er thing, but I can't because that's a biker thing. But I was called as the Modern Arnis 1%ers, Rocky Passwick, and myself. And there's a couple others out there who really delved into it. I put myself in a different category than even in Rocky's case, because Rocky had other martial art experience background. I had none. This is what I started in. At the time of
your backyard brawling.
Yeah. Well, backyard brawling, Thank you, Kara. So I did a lot of backyard training with friends, but nothing worth talking about.
Right.
But I didn't have structured lessons. So, and at the time, like Rocky talked about, there was only 3 full-time academies that he knows of. He had the first, John Bryan had the second, and I had the only other one. And he actually, during the Dean Franco show that you were on, actually credited me of having the most successful.
Right.
But at the time of Remy's death, I was the only one that had a full-time dedicated academy to teaching Remy's art. And I'm going to make a point of saying Remy's art because the brothers were also using Remy's name at different times and some people get a little confused with that.
Right.
So Remy would teach the art within your art. And I use that.
That was a tagline of his.
Yes. Back in the 70s even.
So that everybody can be welcome.
So
make you better martial artist.
So what he did was teach the art to people to enhance their primary system without compromising the integrity of their base system. But when it's the art within your art, part of that expression is your art.
Yep. What you brought to begin with to work with.
So if I take the color red and I blend it with the color blue, that makes purple. Purple is neither red nor blue. If you take out red, you don't have purple anymore. I did backyard brawling with friends as well before getting into actual training. Yep, there you go. I would call that a family function. Or that's just my family. So, mostly what Remy taught, there's a lot of, here's the thing. If you put a bunch of Modern Arnis schools together or schools or groups together, you would see this diversity from the main technique, which is amazing. Yep. Amazing. It just shows the potential of what this synthesis can do for you.
Yep.
My whole point and my argument has been, because I represent what Remy did, not what he produced. I tried to be red, and everyone else were the other colors. They're blue, green, whatever. What do you mix with it? And I tried to do the art as close to what he was doing, because the thing here is this: someone has to take over his job or his role. It may not be one person,
right,
but there needs to be person or people that can show the original source material, the original piece of DNA that we mutate.
So we love so much.
Exactly. That is how Ty and I's training lineage all got melded together, because Eric, his teacher, is in Connecticut,
right,
and he had me out there, and I go like, well, what? You got all these guys. You got Richard Roy. You got the Claps. You got all these people out this way. Why do you want me? I'm so far away. Why do you want me to come out here?
Right.
And we specifically talk about Richard Roy, and Richard Roy was one hell of a martial artist, one hell of a Tai Chi practitioner. But he was very upfront. He goes, it's so melded with me, I cannot split the two. It's all one. So I cannot take my Tai Chi out of my Arnis. Okay. He goes, my Tai Chi is my life. So I'm going to have as much Tai Chi in there. I can't take it out, so I'm putting as much as I in. And Eric wanted to have as pure of a source material as possible. So
right,
then if he chose to blend,
right,
he had that original DNA.
Didn't want it pre-mixed.
Yeah. And like I said, because what you're going to get from Chuck Goss, here we go. Steve Gross, the art within your art. Yep. What you would get from Chuck Goss is going to be a Filipino judo / Tang Sudo blend. Kenny Smith would be Filipino Okinawan blend. Brian Zwolinski, Filipino Kempo blend, because we got that from Sifu Lowry. He's going to have those influences. Now, even if you try to do the martial arts all by themselves, you still have decades of that other martial art in your system. Like I tell them, like my Kun Tao and my Sikran, I tell people that even though whatever degrees I have at the moment, don't look at me as a good example of those arts. I'm a better martial artist than my classmates are, because I'm a better martial artist. Okay. I went in as a Grandmaster. I've got better eyes. I got better education, but they do a better job of doing Kun Tao and Sikran than I do, because my personal expression ends up being, I went into Kun Tao and Sikran to look at the roots that may have influenced the development of Modern Arnis. So I'm always going to come from Remy's mindset. When we talk about the Balintawak, I'm always going to have that Modern Arnis mindset when it comes to the delivery system. I can teach the Balintawak, but I'm going to relate the Balintawak to my modern, because I think there's some things in modern. There's ways that I could use modern platforms to deliver Balintawak material easier, but that's not an accurate representation of the original art. Doesn't mean I can't produce a Balintawak player. Right. It means I have a different way of going about it.
Well, and even if you have, your other, I had previous training, right? And I tried to be as devoted to it as its own standalone art as much as possible. But I warn people all to this day that, hey, my power generation is going to be coming from, even if I get everything else good, my power generation comes from my Chinese martial arts. That said, I felt vindicated in that, because I felt the same thing in Remy, just from a different source. So I don't feel too bad about it. But I do warn people about that, because I know that maybe they want to get get that feel of what Remy was bringing to the table, so they could do their own mix.
Yeah, right. And that's what I get all upset. And I'm not saying these other guys can't teach you good martial arts. And it's been a while. Randy Shea said something that pissed me off, but he was 100% correct. I just didn't understand how to be. We were at the one camp, and I was having a bad day, and Remy and I were in it. We have it. I mean, you're going to have that thing. So we were into it. We had an argument. And then Randy made the comment to, well, you don't do modern arts anyways. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, you talk about all my limb destructions that are right from the form and all this other stuff. And then I realized, oh, well, that's right. you never took the training wheels off. You're still doing it as a hybrid program. Beyond that, I'm doing as a standalone system. Matter of fact, I never did it as a hybrid because John Bryant had a full-time school.
Right.
So my teacher, that's the person that initially put me on the path before I became a director of Remy, he wasn't doing modern. He was doing Remy Presas Arnis.
Right. Well, I mean, so here's the thing, right? So with the material you got from Remy, if you didn't have anything else, you had to put the work in. You had to deconstruct it and reconstruct it and put it back together and really delve into it, just as if what you had to do in whatever your main art was. Everybody did that. You might have been directed on how to do that. But if you didn't have to do that with modern, you might not see those connections.
And just for the record, because that I said this now, and now it may open up it might open up something, and someone may say something about this. For the record, all my black belts have passed Remy's test. Like, I produced 21 black belts before Remy passed away. They're all RPCs, Remy Presas certified by Remy, my students, passing his tests all the way up to 3rd degree black belt. You know, some of my black belts were the same belt levels as the Masters of Tappy Tappy. You know, and George, if he's still here, was around with that as well. Right. So, you know, he knows what I'm talking about. So I understand. I mean, like I said, that's that's another reason why I go Presas Arnis, like Parker's Kempo, you know, trying to homage to Remy, because I really want to show. And how you doing, sir? Maganda umaga.
That's right.
But I really think that you know, my goal is to promote what, you know, I have no problem people doing it, the art within your art. But it's not an example of what Remy did. It's an example of what Remy could produce, and there's two different things. And I don't know if people understand.
He was helping you find the art within your art for you, right? Getting you better. But what he was doing was his synthesis.
Yes. It is a fact. There we go, George. And then, hey, Primo, how you doing? So, yeah,
maybe it's too fine a point for people. I mean, so really, you know, in one say, what is Modern Arnis? Modern Arnis is what you put into it, what you got out of it, what you saw, and that part's good too, right? I mean,
well, I want to finish up with this one comment.
Sure.
So there was Dan Anderson made a comment about how he knew what Modern Arnis was based on a 1986 article. Okay, listen.
When he wasn't done making it.
There you go. Remy was constantly evolving the art,
right?
Constantly evolving. He was on a constant martial art walkabout.
Yep.
Wherever the path took him is where he ended up going.
We all have stories. If you spent some time with him, you probably have some stories about something that he saw that he then used and said, that is mine.
I mean, all the ground shit happened because of the Gracies.
Right.
You know, I mean, there was definitely outside influence. He started hanging around Wally J more. He started hanging around Ron Browning, changed some things. You know, hang around different people. I mean, there was a photo yesterday or the other day. There's a picture of Remy, Guy Metzger, Ron Browning, and others in the photo. But Remy was hanging around two UFC guys. Ron Browning coached Guy Metzger, who was to be the UFC champion.
Right.
So he was getting more influences all the time.
I think Remy was that guy that was one of those rare people that, you know, he was a sponge, you know, like no other, but at the same time he had synthesized it into truly, you know, tying together with all of his experience and knowledge. And it was still Remy, even though he stole it.
Yes, we can see you, Bill. Still in the Philippines. So we're looking forward to when you get back.
Good morning still. Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, the thing here is this. Remy's art, Modern Arnis by Remy Presas, stopped in October of 2000. Okay. Its development with him at the helm ended when he did. He would keep changing and evolving. The other thing I want to talk about the person real quick is this. Unless you talk to Remy and ask the question, okay, if you interviewed Remy and you only asked the question once, you didn't get the right answer. Guarantee it. He didn't understand. You had to ask. I asked the same question multiple questions, multiple times to get a more accurate answer.
Right. You had to peel back those layers of understanding, language, what he was comfortable with sharing at that point, et cetera, et cetera.
I got complete. If I looked at how he answered, I would ask these questions like every 3 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I got done answering or asking the question, it was still the same answer, but a completely different answer at the end.
Right. You get the feel of it developed into something more than what you thought.
And he wouldn't get things right, or you might not get it right.
Right.
Hey, is it true, Remy, that Dumog comes from Sambo? And his response was,
right.
You are right. Sambo is like Dumog.
Right.
That's the answer to a question that wasn't asked.
Right.
So what did you hear? I heard him say that Sambo was like Dumog.
Right.
It's not the same, but it's like it.
Right.
And the person tried to ask if Dumog came from Sambo. And Remy didn't validate that at all. Right. But some people would hear that they did. And listen, there's like Joe Ribello does a really good interview. My question would be, if you asked all those questions again and again, would the answer still be the same? And I don't know. Okay. I spent a lot of time in Chicago, 83, 84. The flow was a major takeaway. Every era, and that's another thing. Depending on when you train, there was a different go with the flow.
Right.
Tappy tappy, trapping hands was a big thing. Hey there, Paul O'Grady.
His name came up. You summoned him.
There we go. I'm late. I'm late, but good evening. Yes. Yeah, we were talking about you in the article earlier, Paul. Got to see if you can find that. So I've got an appointment with Dean Franco because we're going to do a pre-show about Modern Arnis in years. So if you guys want to listen to FMA, go to Dean Franco's personal Facebook page. We're going to be doing it over there. I told him 10-ish. It is 10-ish.
Yep.
Next week, Coach Danny Terrell.
Awesome.
It's going to be all right. And George says hello. If you all think that we need to discuss the second part of this discussion more, reach out to us. Let us know. I think we got it, but we'll go from there. Oh, wait a minute. When you heard you got it, man, it made you feel like $1 million. Yeah, because he was a major motivator.
You got it, baby.
I'll have to look the Steve Gross guy up to see if I know him or not. All right, baby. And how are you doing? You're the Arnis princess. Oh, no. You're a boy. You cannot be the friend. Well, if you identify, that is okay. Hey, hooray! See, I'm not playing. You guys got to talk to each other on Facebook Messenger or something. So hey, Paul, George comes down and trains at the club periodically. You could do the same too, but especially since this year, you know what this year is for me, brother? 35. It's a 70. Now everyone's saying, what the hell are you talking about? We met at Super Grands. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, cool. That's right. Super Grands were in Buffalo. And yeah, glasses too. So if I got 35, 70, this year will be my 35th anniversary as a Modern Arnis black belt. And it's also the 35th anniversary of Horizon Martial Arts. And during the celebration, we're going to be doing a few things, and one of which is an alumni special to get some of my old members back, Paul. But we'll talk about that as we go. Next week, we have Coach Terrell.
Yep.
And then in 2 weeks after that, we've got Chris from Vulpus Training Blades coming on again. He's got new products, new variations, and he's dressed up the Datu series.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. Thank you, sir. And he goes in. Okay, good. He's in, hopefully. Yes, there we go. All right. Well, listen, everybody, I'm going to go over to FMA Discussion, Dean Franco's Facebook page. We'll be showing it live tonight. We'll be back next week. Not sure. Then we'll go from there. So I think I need to promote there, my friend.
All good. I said the Chad thing, and just everybody have a good week, and thanks for joining us. It was a good discussion back and forth. I appreciate the participation.
Yes, thanks, Steve. I'm glad you liked it. Listen, as always, please stay safe and stay sane. This is Dr. Tim.
and PG Tye.
We'll see you all soon.
Yep. Take care.
As I gotta get the right video here. I think this is the right one.